I still remember the exact moment I realized that the person sleeping in the room next to mine, the woman I called my best friend, had been systematically destroying my life for over a year. I was sitting on the floor of my bedroom in our shared apartment in Chicago, surrounded by credit card statements I had never seen before, collection notices addressed to me for accounts I had never opened, and screenshots of conversations where she had told everyone I loved that I was unstable, dangerous, and not to be trusted. My hands were shaking so badly that the papers rattled against each other. I kept thinking there had to be some mistake. There had to be an explanation, because Maya wouldn't do this to me. Maya was my person. Maya had held me when I cried about my father's death. Maya had stayed up all night with me when I was terrified about losing my job. Maya had promised me that we would always have each other's backs. But Maya had been wearing a mask the entire time, and I was about to spend the next 18 months of my life carefully, methodically, and completely legally tearing that mask away so the entire world could see the monster underneath. Let me take you back to the beginning, because you need to understand how deep this betrayal went. You need to understand that this wasn't just a roommate situation gone wrong. This was a calculated, premeditated destruction of everything I had built, carried out by someone who smiled in my face every single day while she did it. I met Maya Richardson during my junior year of college at Northwestern. I was studying marketing, she was in communications, and we ended up in the same study group for a statistics class neither of us wanted to take. From the very first conversation, we just clicked. She had this way of making you feel like you were the most interesting person in the room. She would lean in when you talked, ask follow-up questions, remember the tiny details you mentioned weeks later. I thought it meant she genuinely cared. Now I know it meant she was collecting information, storing it away for future use. By the time we graduated, Maya and I were inseparable. We moved to Chicago together, found a 2-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park, and started building our adult lives side by side. I landed a job at a mid-sized marketing firm, working my way up from junior account coordinator. Maya got a position at a PR company downtown. We fell into an easy routine of Sunday brunches, Thursday wine nights, and sharing every detail of our lives with each other. I told her about my family, about my father's illness, about the inheritance I received when he passed during our second year in the apartment. I told her about my insecurities, my fears, my dreams of eventually starting my own marketing consultancy. I told her about every guy I dated, every fight I had with my mother, every professional setback and triumph. I handed her the blueprint to destroy me, and I did it willingly because I trusted her completely. The first sign that something was wrong came about 3 years into our living arrangement. I was 26, finally feeling stable in my career, and I had started dating a man named Daniel. He was an architect, kind and thoughtful, and things were getting serious between us. I noticed that Maya's attitude toward our relationship was strange. She would make little comments about Daniel being too boring for me, too safe. When he came over for dinner, she would find reasons to interrupt us, to insert herself into every conversation. I brushed it off as her being protective, or maybe a little jealous of how much time I was spending with him. Then one night, about 4 months into my relationship with Daniel, he came over looking troubled. Maya wasn't home, which was unusual for a weeknight. Daniel sat me down and told me that Maya had sent him a message on Instagram. She had told him that I had a history of being emotionally unstable, that I had been hospitalized for mental health issues in college, and that he should be careful because I had a pattern of becoming obsessive and possessive in relationships. She said she was only telling him because she cared about both of us and didn't want to see either of us get hurt. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. None of it was true. I had never been hospitalized for anything. I had never exhibited any of the behaviors she described. When I confronted Maya the next day, she was the picture of innocence. She cried. She apologized profusely. She said she had been drinking that night and had gotten paranoid after reading some article about warning signs in relationships. She said she realized immediately that she had made a terrible mistake and that she had already reached out to Daniel to apologize and explain that she had overreacted. She begged me to forgive her. And I did. Because that's what you do when your best friend makes a mistake, right? You forgive them. You move on. You chalk it up to a lapse in judgment and trust that it won't happen again. Daniel and I worked through it, though there was always a slight distance after that. He looked at me differently sometimes, like he was searching for signs of the instability Maya had described. 6 months later, we broke up. He said he just didn't see a future with us, but I always wondered if Maya's words had planted seeds of doubt that he could never fully shake. I wish I could tell you that I woke up after the Daniel incident. I wish I could tell you that I saw Maya clearly from that moment on. But I didn't. I made excuses. I convinced myself it was an isolated incident. I let her continue to be my confidant, my emergency contact, my person. The financial betrayal started around the time my father passed away. I received an inheritance of about $200,000, money that my dad had worked his entire life to save. I was responsible with it. I put most of it into savings and investments, keeping some accessible for emergencies. I mentioned the inheritance to Maya because we told each other everything. I remember her hugging me, telling me that my father would be so proud of how I was honoring his memory by being smart with the money. What I didn't know was that Maya had been paying close attention to more than just my emotional state. Over the next year, strange things started happening. I would check my credit score and notice it had dropped significantly. I assumed it was some reporting error and didn't investigate further. I started getting calls from numbers I didn't recognize, and when I answered, they would hang up. Once, I received a letter from a bank I had never used, thanking me for opening an account. I called the bank, and they said there must have been a clerical error. Someone had applied with a similar name, and the letter had been misdirected. I believed every excuse, every explanation, because the alternative was unthinkable. The unraveling began on a Tuesday in November, about 18 months ago now. I had taken a half day from work because I wasn't feeling well. I came home early and saw that Maya had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter. She was always so careful about her devices, always locking her screens, always closing everything when she left a room. I had noticed it before, but assumed she was just privacy conscious. Her laptop was open to her email. I wasn't planning to look. I swear I wasn't. But a subject line caught my eye as I walked past. It said, "Account statement, Rachel Winters." That's my name. I stopped cold. What happened next felt like falling into a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. I sat down at the counter and scrolled through her emails. She had opened 3 credit cards in my name over the past 2 years. She had taken out a personal loan for $15,000. She had opened a bank account using my social security number and had been using it to funnel money from what looked like some kind of online scheme. There were emails from collection agencies, payment reminders, and threats of legal action, all connected to accounts I had never opened, all with my name on them. She had destroyed my credit. She had stolen tens of thousands of dollars. She had committed identity theft and fraud using information I had trustingly shared with her over years of friendship. But that wasn't all. As I kept scrolling, shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse, I found something even worse. I found a folder of screenshots, conversations with my colleagues, my friends, my family. In every single one, Maya was telling lies about me. She told my coworker Sarah that I had been bad-mouthing her behind her back. She told my college friend Jessica that I had said her husband was unattractive and that she had settled. She told my mother that I had been struggling with substance abuse and that she was worried about me. She told my boss's assistant that I had been looking for other jobs and was planning to leave the company. For years, Maya had been systematically poisoning every relationship in my life while smiling at me across the breakfast table. I don't know how long I sat there. It could have been minutes or hours. I took photos of everything on my phone. I I screenshotted every email, every conversation, every piece of evidence I could find. Then I closed the laptop exactly as she had left it, went to my room, and sat on the floor with my back against the door. I cried until I couldn't breathe. Then I cried some more. Because it wasn't just the money or the credit score. It wasn't just the lies she had told. It was the realization that my entire adult friendship with this woman had been a performance. Every late-night conversation, every moment of vulnerability I had shared with her, every time I had trusted her with my secrets, she had been using it against me. I felt like such a fool. I felt like I should have seen it. I felt like somehow this was my fault for being so naive. That night, Maya came home like nothing was wrong. She asked if I was feeling better. She offered to make me tea. She sat on the couch next to me and talked about her day, and I looked at her face and saw nothing. No guilt, no shame, no hint that she had spent years betraying me in every possible way. She was that good. I knew in that moment that I couldn't just confront her. If I screamed at her, if I threw her out, if I called the police immediately, she would spin it. She would play the victim. She would tell everyone that I had finally snapped, that I had gone crazy, that all those things she had said about me were true. I would look like the unstable one, and she would walk away with my reputation in tatters and no consequences for what she had done. No, I was going to be strategic. I was going to be patient. I was going to document everything, build an airtight case, and destroy her so completely that she would never be able to do this to anyone else again. But I was going to do it legally. I was going to do it the right way, because if I stooped to her level, she would win. The first step was the hardest, acting normal. I had to look Maya in the face every single day and pretend I didn't know what she had done. I had to laugh at her jokes, share meals with her, listen to her complain about her job, while knowing that she had stolen my identity and tried to turn everyone I loved against me. There were nights when I would go to my room, stuff a pillow against my mouth, and scream just to release some of the rage that was building inside me. But I was strategic. I started keeping a detailed log of everything. I noted every time she accessed my mail before I did. I documented the times she casually asked about my finances, my schedule, my passwords. I realized that she had access to so much of my life because I had given it to her freely. We shared a Netflix account. We had each other's phone passwords for emergencies. She knew the answers to all of my security questions because they were based on memories I had shared with her. I started changing things slowly so she wouldn't notice. I opened a new bank account at a different institution and began redirecting my paychecks there. I changed my passwords, one at a time, to things she would never guess. I got a P.O. box and started having my important mail sent there instead of to our apartment. Every change was small, subtle, and designed not to raise suspicion. Then, I started reaching out to the people she had poisoned against me. This was the most painful part. I called my mother first. When I asked her if Maya had ever said anything concerning about me, there was a long silence. Then my mother admitted that Maya had called her about 6 months ago, saying that she was worried about me. She had implied that I was drinking too much, that I had been acting erratic, that she thought I might be heading toward a breakdown. My mother had been concerned, but didn't want to bring it up because she didn't want to push me away. I stayed calm. I explained that none of it was true, that Maya had been lying about me to multiple people, and that I was gathering evidence. My mother was horrified. She apologized for believing any of it. I told her that I didn't blame her, that Maya was incredibly convincing, that this was exactly why I needed to handle this carefully. I had the same conversation with Sarah from work, with Jessica from college, with several other friends who had grown distant over the past few years. Every single one of them admitted that Maya had said something troubling about me at some point. Little seeds of doubt planted in casual conversations, designed to slowly isolate me from my support network. The pattern was undeniable. Maya had been running a years-long campaign to systematically dismantle my life, and the most chilling part was that I still didn't know why. What had I ever done to her? What had I ever done except trust her and support her and try to be a good friend? The answer came from an unexpected source. About 2 months into my investigation, I ran into Maya's ex-boyfriend from college at a coffee shop. His name was Marcus, and they had dated for about a year before I even met her. We got to talking, and when I mentioned that Maya and I were still roommates, his face changed. He got very quiet and then asked if he could tell me something that he probably should have said years ago. Marcus told me that Maya had done something similar to him when they were together. She had slowly isolated him from his friends and family, told lies about him to people he cared about, and even tried to access his financial accounts. He said he didn't realize the extent of it until after they broke up, when friends started coming to him with stories about things Maya had supposedly told them he said. He had wanted to warn me when he saw how close we were becoming, but Maya had told him that if he ever said anything to me, she would accuse him of things that would ruin his life. He had been too scared to speak up. I couldn't blame him. I knew exactly how convincing Maya could be. But Marcus gave me something valuable: perspective. Maya wasn't doing this because of something I had done. This was who she was. This was a pattern. She found people, earned their trust, and then exploited them for her own benefit while enjoying the destruction she caused. There was something deeply wrong with her, something that went far beyond normal jealousy or opportunism. Armed with this knowledge, I continued building my case. I consulted with a lawyer about the identity theft and fraud. She explained my options. I could file a police report, I could dispute the fraudulent accounts, and I could potentially pursue civil action for damages. But she warned me that these cases could be complicated, especially when the perpetrator was someone with intimate access to the victim's information. I would need as much documentation as possible. So I documented. I became obsessive about it, actually. Every piece of evidence went into a secure folder on a hard drive I kept locked in a safe deposit box at my bank. I recorded timestamps, cross-referenced emails, and built a timeline of Maya's activities. I was determined to leave no room for doubt. The hardest moment came about 4 months into my investigation. I was so tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of living with someone who had betrayed me so completely. Tired of carrying this weight alone. One night, after Maya had gone to bed, I stood in the living room and seriously considered just walking into her room and confronting her. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to demand answers. I wanted her to know that I knew, that she hadn't fooled me, that I wasn't the stupid, naive person she apparently thought I was. But I didn't. I went back to my room, opened my evidence folder, and reminded myself why I was doing this. If I confronted her now, she would have time to delete evidence, to craft a narrative, to turn this around on me. I needed to wait until I had everything. I needed to wait until there was no escape for her. The break in the financial case came when I was reviewing the fraudulent bank account she had opened in my name. I noticed that the statements showed regular deposits from an online platform I didn't recognize. When I researched it, I discovered it was associated with a pyramid scheme that had recently been shut down by the FTC. Maya had apparently been using my identity as part of this scheme, making me legally liable for transactions I had no knowledge of. This was serious. This wasn't just identity theft. This was potential fraud charges that could follow me for years. I immediately contacted my lawyer and explained what I had found. She advised me to file a police report as soon as possible to establish that I was a victim, not a participant. But I wasn't ready to file yet. I needed one more piece of the puzzle. I needed to understand the full scope of what Maya had done before I made my move. That piece came about 6 months into my investigation. Maya had started dating someone new, a man named Trevor who worked in finance. He seemed nice enough, and I noticed that Maya was spending more and more time at his place. One evening, while she was out, I was doing my regular check of my credit report, when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There was a new inquiry. Someone had attempted to open a credit card in my name just 2 days ago. The application had been denied because of the fraud alert I had placed on my credit file, but the attempt had been made. Maya was still doing it. Even now, even after everything, she was still trying to use my identity to open accounts. That was the moment I knew I was ready. I had enough evidence. I had documentation going back years. I had statements from people she had lied to, records of the fraudulent accounts, proof of the recent attempt. I had everything I needed. But before I went to the police, I wanted to do something else. I wanted to make sure that when Maya fell, she fell completely. I wanted everyone in her life to know exactly who she was. I started with her job. I had gathered evidence that she had been conducting personal business during work hours, using her work computer to manage the fraudulent accounts and coordinate her scheme. I packaged this information carefully and sent it to her company's HR department, with a cover letter explaining the situation and providing contact information for the police detective who would be handling the case. Next, I reached out to Trevor. This was risky, and I debated about it for weeks, but I kept thinking about Marcus, about how he had been scared into silence, about how Maya had moved on to her next victim without ever facing consequences. I couldn't let her do the same thing to Trevor. I asked to meet him for coffee, just the two of us. When he showed up, he looked nervous. I understood why. It was an unusual request. I told him everything. I showed him the evidence. I watched his face go through disbelief, to confusion, to horror, as he realized the woman he was falling for had been systematically destroying her best friend while pretending to be a loving roommate. Trevor was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then he told me something that confirmed everything I suspected about Maya. He said that she had already started asking him questions about his finances, his family, his passwords. She had positioned herself as so caring, so concerned about security, that he had willingly shared information he never would have shared with someone he had only been dating for a few months. He said he had been starting to feel like something was off, but he couldn't put his finger on it until now. I told him that what he did with the information was up to him, but that I would be filing a police report within the week and he should be prepared for the fallout. The day I went to the police station was one of the most nerve-wracking days of my life. I had prepared a folder with all of my evidence, organized chronologically, with explanations for each piece. The detective who took my report was a woman named Patricia Walsh, and she listened to my entire story without interrupting. When I finished, she looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. She told me that this was one of the most comprehensive and well-documented cases of identity theft and fraud she had ever seen. She said that my preparation would make their job significantly easier. Then she said something that I'll never forget. She thanked me for being patient, for not confronting Maya, for doing this the right way. She said that too many victims in these situations act on emotion and end up compromising their own cases. The investigation moved quickly after that. Detectives pulled records, subpoenaed documents, and built a case that went even deeper than what I had uncovered on my own. It turned out that I wasn't Maya's only victim. She had done similar things to a former coworker and to a cousin who had stopped speaking to her family years ago without explanation. The police found evidence connecting Maya to multiple instances of fraud and identity theft spanning nearly a decade. While the investigation was ongoing, I had to continue living with Maya. The police asked me not to say anything, not to change my behavior, not to tip her off. Those were the longest weeks of my life. Every time she looked at me, I wondered if she could see it in my eyes. But I had become good at pretending by then. I had become good at wearing a mask, just like she did. The day of her arrest, I wasn't home. I had arranged to be at my mother's house, 2 hours away. I didn't want to be there when they came for her. I didn't want to see her face. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of a confrontation. But I heard about it later from the building manager. He said that Maya had screamed the entire time, that she had insisted there was some mistake, that she had demanded to call me because I would clear everything up. She actually thought I would defend her. She actually thought she had me so completely fooled that I would take her side even as the police led her away in handcuffs. The news spread quickly. Maya's arrest was covered by local media because of the scope of the fraud and because the investigation had uncovered her connection to the pyramid scheme that had defrauded dozens of people. Her face was on the news. Her name was in the papers. Everyone who had ever known her learned exactly who she really was. Her family tried to reach out to me in the weeks after the arrest. Her mother called me crying, asking how I could do this to Maya, insisting that there had to be an explanation. I told her as calmly as I could that the explanation was in the police evidence. I told her that I had been Maya's victim for years and that I had only done what any victim has the right to do: seek justice. Her mother hung up on me, and I never heard from her again. The legal process took over a year. Maya was charged with multiple counts of identity theft, fraud, and financial crimes. She tried to take a plea deal that would have given her minimal jail time, but the prosecutor pushed for stronger consequences because of the pattern of behavior and the number of victims. In the end, she was sentenced to 4 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 2. She was also ordered to pay restitution, though I doubted I would ever see that money. But the money wasn't the point. It had never been about the money. The sentencing hearing was the first time I saw Maya since her arrest. She looked different, smaller somehow. The confidence that had always radiated from her was gone. She sat at the defendant's table with her head down, refusing to look at anyone in the courtroom. When the judge asked if she had anything to say, she mumbled something about being sorry and asking for mercy. I had submitted a victim impact statement, but I had chosen not to read it aloud. I didn't want to give her my words. I didn't want to give her my pain. I just wanted her to face the consequences and disappear from my life. After the sentencing, I walked out of the courthouse and stood on the steps in the cold December air. My mother was beside me. Sarah from work had taken the day off to be there. Marcus had even shown up, though he stayed in the back of the courtroom. These were people who had been affected by Maya's lies, people who had believed her at one point or another, and they had all come to see justice served. For a moment, I felt empty. I had spent over a year focused on this, on building the case, on taking her down. Now that it was over, I didn't quite know what to do with myself. But then something unexpected happened. A woman I didn't recognize approached me on the courthouse steps. She introduced herself as Danielle, and she said she was the cousin Maya had defrauded years ago. She had followed the case in the news and had come to the sentencing even though she lived 3 states away. She wanted to thank me. Danielle told me that when Maya had done it to her, she hadn't had the evidence. She hadn't had the documentation. She had tried to tell people, but Maya had already poisoned them against her. Her own family had believed Maya over her, and she had been forced to walk away from everyone she loved just to escape the situation. For years, she had carried the shame and the isolation of being disbelieved. But now, because of the case I had built, Danielle's family finally knew the truth. They had reached out to her. They had apologized. They had welcomed her back. She was rebuilding relationships she had thought were lost forever. I cried when she told me that. For the first time since I had discovered what Maya had done, I cried tears that weren't from anger or despair. I cried because something good had come from all of this. I cried because my choice to be patient, to be strategic, to do this the right way, had helped someone I had never even met. The months after the trial were about rebuilding. I moved into a new apartment, one that was just mine. I went to therapy to work through the trust issues that Maya had left me with. I reconnected with friends and family members who had distanced themselves because of her lies. Every conversation was hard, but every conversation was also healing. My career recovered too. Once my coworkers understood the truth about Maya's interference, they were incredibly supportive. My boss actually apologized to me for any coldness I might have experienced, explaining that she had heard rumors but hadn't wanted to bring them up. I told her the same thing I told everyone, that Maya was very good at what she did, and that blaming ourselves for being deceived wasn't fair to any of us. The credit repair took longer. Undoing the damage that Maya had done to my financial identity was a slow, frustrating process, but bit by bit, I cleared the fraudulent accounts, disputed the incorrect information, and rebuilt what she had destroyed. My father's inheritance, which I had thought would be my safety net, had been partially depleted by legal fees and the process of recovery. But I was alive, I was free, and I had my name back. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about Maya. I wonder if she ever truly understood what she did. I wonder if sitting in that prison cell, she ever felt genuine remorse, or if she only felt sorry for herself for getting caught. I wonder what made her the way she was, what void she was trying to fill by destroying the people who trusted her. But mostly, I think about the version of myself who sat on that bedroom floor, surrounded by evidence of betrayal, shaking and crying and feeling so completely broken. I want to reach back through time and tell her that it's going to be okay, that she's going to get through this, that the person who hurt her is going to face consequences, and that she's going to come out the other side stronger than she ever imagined. I also think about the lesson Maya taught me, though she never intended to teach it. Trust is precious. It should be given carefully and to people who have earned it. But the betrayal of trust doesn't mean that trust itself is wrong. It means that some people are skilled at taking advantage of something beautiful. The fault lies with them, not with those of us who were open-hearted enough to believe in them. I dated again, eventually, a man named James who I met through a mutual friend. The first time he asked for my phone password, I flinched. I had to explain why, and he listened without judgment. We took things slow. I was honest about my history and my trust issues. He was patient in ways that I hadn't known a person could be patient. We've been together for almost a year now. I still have moments of doubt, moments where my brain tells me that I'm being fooled again. But those moments are getting fewer and further between. James knows about all of it. He read the court documents. He understands what I went through and why I sometimes need extra reassurance. And he's still here. Maya will be eligible for parole soon. I try not to think about it too much. I received a letter from the victim notification system telling me that I have the right to submit a statement if she applies. I don't know if I will. Part of me wants to be there, to look her in the eye and tell her that I'm thriving despite everything she did. But another part of me knows that my best revenge is not giving her any more of my time, my energy, or my attention. Because here's the thing about revenge that no one tells you. It's not about making the other person suffer. It's about reclaiming your own story. It's about refusing to be a passive victim and taking control of the narrative. Maya tried to write me as the crazy friend, the unstable one, the person who couldn't be trusted. She tried to make that my identity. But I rewrote the story. I became the survivor, the investigator, the one who brought the truth to light. And that's the ending I chose for myself. The woman who trusted her roommate with everything and learned, the hardest way possible, that some people are not worthy of that trust. The woman who could have collapsed under the weight of betrayal, but instead found the strength to build a case, brick by brick, until justice was inevitable. The woman who lost friends, money, and years of her life to someone else's manipulation, but who got every single thing back and more. That's who I am now. That's the story I tell. Maya Richardson is sitting in a prison cell, stripped of her freedom and her false reputation. The people she deceived know the truth about her. The future she was building on lies has crumbled completely. And I am standing in the light, surrounded by people who love me, living a life that she tried to destroy but could never quite reach. If you're watching this and you're in a situation where someone you trust is hurting you, I want you to know that there is a way out. Document everything. Be patient. Be strategic. Don't let anger make you act rashly. Build your case, find your allies, and trust the process. Justice doesn't always come quickly, but when it comes completely. And when you're standing on the other side of it, when you're looking back at the person who tried to destroy you, you'll know that you won. Not because they're suffering, but because you're free. Because their power over you is gone. Because you took back your life, your identity, and your truth. That's the revenge that matters. That's the revenge that lasts. I trusted my roommate with everything. That was my mistake. But the way I handled her betrayal, the patience and the strategy, and the refusal to let her turn me into someone I'm not, that was my triumph. And no one, not Maya, not anyone, can ever take that away from me.